Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast. This podcast is meant to bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality. Whether you are a current or aspiring short-term rental property manager, host, or real estate investor, you're in the right place. Dive in with us to uncover the captivating stories and golden nuggets from industry heavyweights, including leaders, operators, investors, syndicators, founders, and entrepreneurs. So thank you. Really, thank you for embarking on this journey with me. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast, and I promise I'll do my best to deliver value-packed episodes that hopefully will not just inform, but also help inspire the next generation of real estate and hospitality professionals. Truly yours, Sebastián Muñoz. All right. Hi, Saket. How are you today?
I'm good, buddy. How are you, man? I'm really excited to be
Very
here.
good. Really excited to have you on as well. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're very busy. You have your conference coming on, your podcast, your syndication, a lot happening. So I really appreciate you being here. And for those of you who, it's the first time joining to the show, this is the Hospitality Edge, where we try to bring what we believe are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality. And here we are with Saket, who started as a management consultant and then went on to do many things, such as work at Airbnb, eventually become a syndicator, multifamily syndicator. And right now he's building an amazing community around wealth building with podcasts, conferences, and whatnot. So Saket, for anyone out there that hasn't heard of you, would you mind just giving us an overview of who you are and what you've been up to these days?
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. And you did a phenomenal job in covering a lot of it. It's really, as you said, I'm a consultant by training. I'm a recovery consultant, as I said, because I can never not think like a consultant, which is actually very helpful in what we do. And back in 2017 is when I joined Airbnb. I worked there for about 5 years and leading the business operations for the sales team. And what led me understand a lot of the nuances about how to run a hospitality business and what makes hospitality click. Until then, I had no understanding of hospitality, right? I loved living in a hotel as a consultant, but I never understood what goes into delivering an experience. We did that for about 5 years, and back last December was my last day. December 2nd was my last day at Airbnb. And since then, all along the way, I had a lot of different things going on the side, but that's when we kicked things into higher gear. We launched our podcast back in October, which is all focused on my journey and how I define wealthy, which we can dig deeper a little bit later. And I believe it's possible for everyone. We have launched several funds. One of them is an Airbnb fund, a short-term rental fund. We're doing phenomenally well there. We just closed on 8 units there. Now we're acquiring 4 more by the end of next week. So we're doing pretty good there. Again, leveraging on the learnings I learned at Airbnb of what makes a good Airbnb host and a successful one. We have a venture capital business where we invest in medical startups. We also have a few other things going on the side, multifamily, car washes. There's a lot going on. And above all, as you said, I am starting my own conference, which is going to be called Migrate to Wealth, because I realized the traction that we've built on the podcast, that message is resonating with a lot of people. So when I built upon that message and do a crash course in 4 days of 5 dimensions, which are your mind, your body, your relationship, your money, and your contribution. And we're bringing over 40 speakers, some live, some sessions like that, to make sure that we can add a lot of value and hopefully inspire some more people to migrate into wealth.
That's amazing, Saket. So there's a lot for us to cover there. I would like to start with where everything begins as far as your why and your mission. I believe, you and I were having this conversation last time on how this is larger than just about wealth for yourself. And you were telling me about how, one of the things that really pushed you to do all of this has to do with, your daughters and what you want to pass on to them as far as learnings. So So why don't you talk to us a little bit about how that has motivated you to start creating content, so that the lessons that you have learned throughout all these years, they can also benefit from?
Definitely. So anything I have done in my life has always been around education, be it for myself or people around me, right? So then during the whole COVID time, back about 2 years ago, I had lost about 5 members of my family. Sebastian, I know you and I have talked about it, but giving a little bit more color to the audience here. Then 2 of them being my sister, who was 2 years older than me, and my mom. And that had a huge...
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, thank you, man. That had a huge awakening for me, because one thing I started asking myself was, I always knew that all of us, our time here is limited. I just never think it's going to be that short, at least for my sister. And my daughters at that time were 5 and 7. And I started thinking about, what, if I were to pass away tomorrow, what am I leaving behind? A dad who worked a lot, a dad who didn't have much time, a dad, any vacation we go to, he had his computer on. Right? There were always and I don't know what they're thinking about, because I never asked them that question. It was more, when I score myself, where am I scoring? And I was probably -10, right? Kind of like in my own mind, wow. I wasn't being a dad I needed to be. And then I started thinking about, if I were to go away tomorrow, and at some point in their life, they're going to come, if I was alive, they would have come to me for an advice. And if I'm not around, what is the medium that I could give them some insights into how I led my life? Doesn't mean that's how they would do it, but some perspective to share with them. And I could only think about 2 or 3 different things. One was writing a book. The other one was writing them personal letters. And really the third thing was, let me just go public with my opinions, with my insights, with my learnings, and let me learn along the way, so they'll know, instead of me telling them my insights, they know how I learn, which is really I learned through talking to people, right? To talking to people who are way smarter than me. And that's what led to everything, which is more about the podcast started that way. I co-authored a #1 best-selling book on Amazon, Think Big. And then we're launching the summit, all with the concept of, really what I wanted to call was migrate to curiosity, because curiosity is a cure for everything. Be it your fear, be it your excitement, be it your depression. Whereas if you just become curious about life, the life is beautiful. If you become analytical about life become a big hassle, right? So a lot of that was approach life through curiosity. In a podcast, you'll see on my podcast, if you were listening to any of those, it's all about, I'm more curious about why people did it than asking them to tell me how I should do it, right? And through that curiosity, a lot of things get uncovered. And that's really what we have done. And along the way, to move a little bit fast forward, one of the things I was thinking about, that's for my daughters, what am I going to do for the world? And one thing that we did was, me and my wife we both are passionate about education. So we have committed ourselves to sponsor K through 12 kids education in India for now. Doesn't mean that's the only place where they need help. Right. That's where I grew up, correct? So I have a pretty deep roots there. We're going to be sponsoring over 100,000 kids education by 2030. That's a goal. That's a bigger why than just our family. Our family is an immediate why, which I needed to do. And thankfully we're doing phenomenally well there. Now we want to make sure that we can take that and spread that same education and curiosity to the kids who actually don't have resources.
That's amazing. And I know you come from humble beginnings yourself, so it's quite impressive, everything you've accomplished. And I want to talk about that concept of education, because I come from an immigrant family myself. I was born in Colombia, and we arrived in Canada about 10 years ago. And I know that for immigrant families, education tends to be very, very important in general. I'm generalizing here, but I think you would agree that it's something that always gets passed on from one generation to another, as far as the importance of that education. And you went on to have a very conservative and traditional education, right? Where you even ended up, with an MBA at Columbia. Yet, when doing my research, I heard you say at some point that, you wish you hadn't gotten that MBA because of the amount of things you could have done with that money instead.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know,
Yeah.
when you are looking at one of your, life's missions being, education to children, in India that don't have access to the right education, what are the foundations that you wish to pass along to those children, more than what the traditional educational system might be teaching us?
Definitely. So I did MBA for the wrong reason. I did MBA for the piece of paper, right? To satisfy my ego. I didn't know at that time. That's what I was doing. That's really what I was doing. So education for purposes of getting a stamp on a piece of paper is not the education we're talking about, right? Now, let's talk about 3 different levels of education. Right now, there's an education platform that my parents gave me that got us out of that environment that we were living in, right? And for that basic education, going to the school, learning technology, learning how to code, learning use the computer, all that stuff is the basic necessity to be successful in any realm that you do. And it's the fastest way out of poverty. Fastest way, at least today. I don't know 10 years down the road what's going to happen, but today, if you want to get out of a poverty zone of being underprivileged, you can easily shift your reality by making sure that you're putting emphasis on education. Now, that doesn't mean it's the only way. That's the fastest way, and almost a sure shot way that you can do that. Now, there comes people like me who've already done that, but that's the only thing I remembered. But I somewhere lost the way, saying, I want to get more degrees. I want to get more degrees. I want to get more degrees. And that's just from the top institution. And not to sound cocky, but I only applied to 1 business school, 2, Wharton and Columbia. That's it. I'm like, if I'm not getting those 2 degrees, I don't want my MBA, right? That approach was, while it got me there, it was not the healthy approach, because that approach in itself tells you I did it for the wrong reasons. I didn't do it for learning. I did it for very different reasons, right? Now, is that good or is that bad? Has it helped me? Has it not helped me? I think it's all debatable, right? We can always look at life and saying, if I didn't do this, something else would have happened. We don't know. But all I know is, knowing what I know now, the amount of money I spent in getting my MBA, I could have turned that money into a lot more different things, right? The problem is I didn't know at that time what I know now. So could I have done that? I don't know that, right? So whether it's true or not, who knows? But knowing now, I can tell a lot of people what to do with that 200K, 200 to 250K to get that education. Of course, we're talking about the US, not in Canada. The US education is very expensive, especially the higher degrees, right? So that is one. Now comes the third part of the education platform, which is my kids, right? They don't necessarily need to, at least at this point, and hopefully that stays true for them, that they're not fighting for survival, right? Now, do they need to learn the same way as somebody who does not have a lot of resources in India? Because everyone, they're both trying to break away different things, right? One's fighting for daily necessities, the other one's fighting for excellence. Doesn't mean the other end doesn't, but their basic necessity is to make sure they have food on the table, right? They have clothes on their bodies and stuff like that. Here, we're talking about a different level of ambition. So like I don't want people to think that
the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's
correct, Maslow's hierarchy, right? Yeah, Maslow's hierarchy, exactly. So it doesn't mean one is better, but they're different. There are different capacity and different understanding of life and different needs that they're trying to meet, right? So for them, going through a traditional route to basically break out of an area is not necessarily the route I would pick for them. For them, it's about love of learning, right? Which is, if you have your love of learning alive, you have other resources to make sure that'll keep you going. Doesn't mean you're gonna not have to work at all, but you're starting at a different point from where I started, from my parents started, right? Every generation helps you push the next generation a little bit further up. So the starting point is very different. Now you got to figure out is what are you going to do with the opportunity that we provided, that new platform provides you, which is going to be more around, let me enjoy learning to make a difference. Not let me do the learning to break out of something. You see, one is very not self-serving, but what is inward focus. The other one is, what can I do with what I have now? Right? And there are two different ways of looking at it. That's how I look at the world, man. Depending upon where you are, the current education system can help you break out of something, or it can also protect you, which is keeping you in a imprison you from breaking out. So it all depends on that. Where are you? Or what my message to most of your listeners, which I believe are a different platform, to figure out, can you look at education to generate curiosity?
Okay.
Curiosity about the world, curiosity about hospitality. That's why I love your show's name, The Hospitality Edge, right? Because anyone can do the hospitality, or they think they can. What we're saying is that you're trying to break out of something and create a differentiator in how hospitality is delivered, which I love, right? So we always have to figure out is what's on the other side, and let's be curious about it, and let's see what can we find out and what difference can we make.
Learning for the sake of learning. I was reading the almanac of Naval Ravikant, a venture capitalist and thinker, great guy. And one of his chapters in the book talks about, you need to cultivate that love of reading and just learning.
Definitely.
And like
Definitely.
the way you look at art, art is the way it is, and someone that's an artist does that thing because they enjoy it, just for its own sake. And when you're able to get to a point where you can do business where it feels like play to you, he talks about that too, but it looks like work to others. He says that's one way of retiring. You can either save as much money to where you earn enough interest that you can live based on that, or the other way of retiring is pretty much you do something that you love, and that way and then there's other ways for sure that we're going to dive into, everything that has to do with passive investing and whatnot. But before that, I want to talk about you talked about how the traditional education system can either help you get out of a certain cycle or a certain environment, but you talked about how it can also become a prison, right? Yep. It can have that effect as well. And when looking at your background, I know that you were laid off at some point, and I really enjoyed something you said about how
2017.
Yes, you said paycheck is not security, paycheck is consistent income, which are two different things. So basically, it's this false sense of security, which is that prison that the traditional educational path could pretty much lead you towards. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. See, look, let's talk about that, right? So let's break. And I'm not for an education system or against an education system, especially in an education system that I didn't grow up in. I didn't, except for my master's, I didn't go to school in the US, right? So, but I'm watching a lot of things. My kids are going to one, so I can see the schooling system. And I'm also driving a lot of my insights from the schools I saw in India. What is a traditional school trying to do? A traditional school is trying to, why were schools set up? If you think about that for a second, the schools were set up to make sure that we prepare our kids for the future jobs. That's the only reason, right? 80 to 90% of us fit in that. And you can see that. And for those of you who don't agree with me, think about how the curriculum of the schools have evolved, right? As the technologies have changed, the curriculum is being adapted, especially in the high school level, where now, at least in India, I know, in the 11th or 12th grade, they're teaching quantum physics, right? And I graduated as an engineer after 4 years after my high school. I still didn't know what a quantum physics is. I didn't, right? So for those of you who are disagreeing with me that the schooling system is not built for setting you up as success as an employee or in the workforce, you're probably wrong. So take a look into that. Challenge your thinking, because what you're saying is probably the story that you want to tell yourself. Agree or disagree with me? I'm pretty clear that that's what the schooling system is for. Now, if you think about it, who is a good employee? Somebody who challenges every single thing is not a good employee. Is not. So what's the second mandate for a schooling system? To conform, to make sure that you can stay in a box of saying, within these two lines, you have a total freedom, you can move around. But the moment you cross this line, even by a millimeter, you're reprimanded, you're punished. Is why you're asking so many questions, right? Why can't you just focus on what we're telling you is right? The challenge is not necessarily encouraged. So if you just look at, and I can go on and on, that I've thought a lot about this topic. So just by look at these two things, are we learning to learn? And are we
learning to ask questions? Yes, that was going to be my next point.
Are we?
You're not encouraged to ask questions. You're encouraged to just answer without even questioning if that was the first question to begin with.
And I tell you, and I don't have a photographic memory, but while I was in India, I could literally remember 50 pages to the period and a comma. Right? I knew in my head, I was flipping pages that, okay, this question was on page number 5. What was the first word? What was the last word? And I remembered everything. Now, what had helped me in acing the exams, right? I was a topper in my college. So yeah, I did very well on paper because I knew how to crack that system. But did it really help me being curious in life? It didn't. Now, the other things happened in my life which made me very curious in my life. I'm thankful for those. Getting laid off being one of the biggest one right now, at least in the recent decade, which really changed the trajectory of my life. If that didn't happen, there'd be a lot of things differently. But if you think about it, where I'm basing my judgment is is the schooling system serving us or not? It's really the question is, you have to start asking the question is, why were the schools built? And what's the purpose of the school going forward? The moment you answer your question, you won't even think, is the learning good or bad? You're going to think about, do I want my kids if I have the choice? Now, we're talking about, I'll flip it back to the underprivileged kids in India. They don't have a choice to be curious, right? At that point where they are. Doesn't mean they cannot be. But they are at a different stage and a different aspect of their life that if I tell them about being curious and stop learning for learning and don't worry about a big job and all that stuff, they're not worried about that. They're like, dude, if I can make $100,000 in a job versus making $20 at a farm, I don't care what gets me there. I just want to get there. Right? But if you're making $100K and you want to make $1 million, and you're saying, give up your freedom of thinking. Don't challenge anything. Just accept what's being told and you're going to make money. Most of us may start that way, but something's going to trigger inside of us in 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, 20 years, where we're going to start hating us. That is this what all life is about? Right? And that's a negative aspect of it. It's sometimes it takes long to get there. And that's why I love that you asked that question, because you're asking that question to me and you're fairly younger compared to me. If you're asking that question is coming from because something is getting triggered, right? And what's more? Where can I create an impact? What can I do more? I'm seeing things in life which are not necessarily that I agree to, but I've been told to agree to. I remember when I was leaving my job in December, everyone, including a lot of my well-wishers, my close family members, they're like, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. people die to work at Airbnb, and you're throwing it all away, right? And they were coming from a very, very good perspective. So I'm not judging them. Right? To a point where I think some of my friends were ashamed to tell other people that they knew somebody who left Airbnb. It was pretty bad, and you can see where their insecurities were coming out. That's all, nothing else. There are very few people who said that this is the right thing to do. Try it, because you can always find a job. Always.
Yeah.
Job is easy, right?
So Saket, tell me something. I've heard you talk about your approach when it comes to raising capital, and how a big part of what you're doing is you're basically silencing all the noise out there from the market, and educating your potential passive investors into how they can ask better questions for themselves, rather than trying to sell them any one particular opportunity. What you just said there on your experience getting out of Airbnb, and everyone was basically talking noise to you, how did you manage to not be distracted by all that noise? And how is that similar to when you try to avoid being distracted by all the noise that's happening out there with interest rates and the war and this and that, when it comes to making your actual investment decisions?
That's actually a great question, right? So let's think about it this way. What prevents people from making a decision that's not mainstream? Right? Let's repeat the question. What prevents people from making a decision that's not mainstream? And I'll let you guys think about it. And then while we're thinking about it, let's see what my opinion is. And I'm always happy for anyone to challenge my opinion, because that's how I'll grow my opinion. Right? So the biggest reason what prevents people from taking an action, taking a decision which is not mainstream, is they can't defend their decision. They think they have to defend their decision. It's because there are a lot of unknowns, right? It's because they're afraid that people will tell them, look, I told you you're going to fail, right? They're afraid to look in the mirror and say, I kind of had a hunch that I shouldn't do it. Right? It's because they're attaching too much importance on two things. One is what the outcome is going to be, and the second is how are people going to look at them. Right? These are really the two things. And in my life, what I've figured out is half of the people in your life will tell you do something, and the other half will tell you don't do it. One of them is going to be right. You don't know which one, right? So what's the point in listening to either one of those? There's no point, because they're saying, and I'm not saying I'm right all the way either. I'm not. You're not going to be, right? But
as long as you can defend your thought process on how you got there.
This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. It may not make sense to. I'll give you an example, actually, a very personal situation, which we haven't talked about it yet. In 2008, and not because of economical reasons, in 2008, me and my wife, we sold everything that we had and moved into a monastery in India for about 2 years.
Okay.
We were basically living with monks, sleeping in literally an 8x10 room. Our meals were being cooked somewhere else. We literally had probably 4 pair of clothes, no computer, no phone, right? We're just kind of like, let's try that life, because we felt that was our calling, and we did it. And it's not important that I did that. It's more important what I went through in that decision-making process. So first of all, I had to make sure is that before I told anyone, before I even told my wife that I want to do that, and my wife did the same exact thing, we both decided that should we do this? We're like, we're not going to discuss it. Give ourselves 3 months. We both come to our independent conclusion of what do we think is right for us. Right? Forget about constraints, forget about money, forget about everything. Let's just think through it is that the right decision for me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we discuss with each other, and then we kind of figured out that both of us want that direction. Then we told our friends, not for their permission, but as a courtesy that we're doing it. Right? By that point, by the time when we told people, we didn't even care what people are going to say. We knew at some point
the decision was made.
The decision was made, right? Decision. Same thing with living Airbnb. I knew I was going to leave it. At that point, even if Airbnb gave me $1 million, I wouldn't have stayed, because I knew I've made up my mind. And at that point, and I made up my mind a lot. I had 5 years to think about it. Right? It's not like I woke up one day and say I want to quit. I built the entire 5 years building a passive income and everything else to get to a point where I could quit. Right? So that was a very intentional plan. It took me 5 years to get there, but I got there eventually. And when I told people, it's not like I was going to change it. I already made up my mind, and I already made up my decision. I was going to live with it. Either it worked out or it didn't work out, right? So that's how I look at my decisions, where I make my decisions before I share with people. Now I've been blessed to have great mentors in my life, great coaches in my life. So some of them are aware of that look, this is what I'm thinking, because I want to make sure that it's an objective thought. There's no emotional attachment with them. They don't care about hurting my feelings. They're just going to tell me as it is. So I do discuss with them. I do discuss with my wife. But even with my wife, unless I know I want to do, she knows me. I was telling her, hey, I'm thinking of starting another podcast. She's like, oh, that means you're already starting it.
Yeah. Like, that means the first episodes are recorded.
I'm like, you already have thought about it. You're telling me? I'm like, no, I really genuinely want to understand your point of view. It's like, Saket, I don't want to waste my time. You're doing it. Even if I say no, I can come up and tell you 1,000 reasons. The fact that you're telling me, you're just being nice to ask my permission, but you're doing it one way or the other, right?
And I can totally see how that's powerful, versus starting to articulate it too early on when you still have doubts yourself.
Yeah,
and then, everyone else's doubts are just going to be pulling you in 10 different directions. You end up moving nowhere.
That's exactly, I think that's it's kind of like, I never thought about it. That's exactly the approach I used when me and my wife started dating. None of my friends knew about me dating her, because I wanted to be sure before I put the noise of my friends in saying, oh, this person has this flaw, this person has that flaw, because no one's perfect, right? And then again, at that point, when I was ready, and of course she knew it, I was ready, we told our friends, like, hey, this is happening. They're like, oh, this is, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Like, at this point, it doesn't even matter, right? I have made up my mind. It's going to work out one way or the other. And I told my wife, I'm never leaving you because I'm going to make it work, period. Not because I like being unhappy. It's that from my end, it's going to work. I have no doubt in my mind. Doesn't mean it's easy, right? But it's, once I've made up my mind, it's going to work. Once I've made up my mind, quitting Airbnb makes sense. I'm going to make sense out of it. Once I've known that an investment thesis is correct, I'm going to make sure that the investment thesis is going to work, because everything is workable in life, right? Everything is. Just have to make sure you stay on track with it. If today you want to work at Airbnb, tomorrow you want to leave Airbnb, day after tomorrow you want to work at Google, then you want to leave again, then you want to go join Apple, then you leave again, then you join Microsoft. Leaving a company is never going to work because you haven't tried enough. If within 6 months of a relationship, you're going to file for divorce, yes, now there are cases where it's needed, but for most of the cases, we haven't tried hard enough. Both parties. I'm not saying one party is to be blamed, right? That's how it works with life. That's how it works with investments. Not every single investment is going to work, right? Whenever we make stock market or the kind of investments we make, real estate, venture capital, but that does not mean the asset class is wrong. You don't understand about it enough yet to make sense out of it. Your due diligence has to be better. Your underwriting has to be better. If you buy an Airbnb the same way as you're buying a long-term rental, it's not going to work, period. because you're buying it incorrectly, right? You're running it incorrectly. So is to blame that Airbnb suck or Airbnb's rock as compared to what, right? So I think we're talking a lot about different things, but kind of like streamlining it all down, right? Kind of like making sure we distill into one that is, the noise can only bother you if you allow the outside noise to bother you, period. If you
Beautiful.
can really build a cage around it and say that I let the noise bother me, I listen to everyone's opinion, that's okay. But I want to build my own opinion first.
Yeah. And just putting it out there once your opinion has been,
and that's okay to be challenged, then, right? If somebody has to challenge and say that, Saket, you moving to a monastery is the worst decision ever, I can't get defensive because that person didn't agree with my decision. I remember I told one person is that I understand that you're not understanding, but I'm not looking for your understanding. I'm telling you I'm doing this, and I don't want you to understand it. She's like, I don't understand how you can do this. I'm like, dude, I understand. I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm not looking for your understanding.
Let me understand something here. You know, when you got laid off, that was before Airbnb, right? That you realized, like, okay, I need to work to build my own wealth. You understood the difference between, net worth and cash flow, because you realized that, all that net worth that you had could not be, liquidated easily. So you understood the power of cash flow as far as, your investments and whatnot. And there's one thing I want to touch on in, the whole assumption of, hey, I'm going to work all my life and I'm just going to retire at 65. I really liked something you said in one of your podcasts, where it's like, those are three assumptions in there. First, that you're going to live and you're going to be alive until that age. Then that you're going to be employable. Then that, you won't be laid off, and that you're going to want to even be working by the time you're 65. Yeah. So I want to understand, when did you make that switch of, when you were at Airbnb, I know you were raising capital on the side. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were already getting started on that path. When did you realize that this was the time you had to go all in full time? And how did you come up to that internal conclusion of, this is it, I'm going in?
I think it was more around my family life with my kids was starting to get affected, because the work at Airbnb, it's not like my work was getting compromised. The work was pretty hard, and it always was, and we always missed the mark. So that was never an issue. The issue was always now I pretty much had 2 full-time jobs, right? One was to raise the capital, which was new to me when I began. So I had to learn the ropes, I had to learn to do it the compliant way, to do it the legal way, to do it in a way where it makes sense, invest my own money, due diligence, and all that. So a lot of this was new to me. So I had to make sure that I was doing it right. So I was putting a lot of time into it. Once I realized that, there's just no end to, I can't carry the 2 things together without making a personal sacrifice. The question was very simple. The question was, what is my why? Why am I doing this? Right? It's not to become the purpose of working was never to become the billionaire. Now, if it happens along the way, great, I'm not going to say no to it. But that was never the goal. So what is the goal? If I were to die tomorrow, does it matter how much money I have in the bank? And the more I started asking those questions, the clearer and clearer it's starting to become to me that a lot of it is about, first of all, forget about my kids and everyone else. Am I growing in my life? Right? Am I learning new skills? Am I being stretched in my own thinking? Came to a point where at Airbnb, I didn't feel like I was. Right? So, okay, then why am I at Airbnb? I'm at Airbnb because of blah, blah, and blah. I could make up 1,000 reasons of why and if I could probably make 10,000 reasons today why I should be at Airbnb. Right? But the core question was, what's the biggest motivator forever for me to work, even within Airbnb or outside Airbnb, is, am I growing, am I learning, and am I impacting? Those 3 things, right? So the first lever is always, am I growing? My personal growth had stopped. So I'm like, you know what, it's fine. It's time to figure this out, whether am I going to accept it or am I going to do something about it? And I looked at the world outside of Airbnb. It was really, I could grow in any dimension I wanted, right? Today, it could be capital raising. Tomorrow, it could be content creation. Day after tomorrow, it could be a podcast. Day after tomorrow, it could be a conference. You see a theme here, right? That there's no limit in where I could personally grow. So if I was going to sacrifice my life and sacrifice my time, and sacrifice was a wrong word, but that was a word back then. And now it's more, if I'm going to enjoy doing something outside, I have to make sure that I'm growing. Right? Now, that doesn't mean I'm spending 24 hours with my kids on a beach. That's not the life I want. And that's not the life I want to show to them. I want to make sure to them is that there are ways to make money where you don't hate yourself. Right? Where you're still passionate about doing the work. Now, what I do now is we just kind of like, interestingly enough, I just helped one of my students save $300,000 in taxes on a 15-minute phone call.
That's pretty good.
When I look at that, and I could literally see both husband and wife, they had tears in their eyes. They're like, Saket, we pay our tax accountant $45,000 a year. And what you could tell us in one phone call, and then not just tell us, basically do it for us. And you save that much on the taxes, it's going, what they were not happy about saving that much taxes. They're like, we can take 4 months of our life off and do something.
Freedom, right? You talk a lot about freedom, and you talk about how you went from, trying to invest, just focusing about your net worth to then, the cash flow became the most important thing. And now you're focusing more on the freedom.
It is freedom, man. So I think in the end, I think all these things give you freedom, right? They give you freedom at a different stage. Our thinking is, our traditional thinking, that's what's been ingrained into us, is that we need $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, $1 billion, whatever. There's a number that everyone else has in their mind. That's not their number. That number has been fed to them. That once I get to that number, I'm free, right? That's a net worth approach. Cash flow approach is, hey, I want to, my expenses are $10,000 a month. I want to make $11,000 a month. I'm done. I'm free, right? A lot of these things are happening because we are all as human beings, we're seeking freedom, right? We just use a different term. We use money, which is a proxy, as a way to gain freedom, right? But what if we start our life with freedom? We don't start our life with money. We start our life with, like for me, I did my first deal. On that first deal, I spent over 5 months of my life. I did not see my kids at all. Thank God the deal didn't work out. And thank God I actually said that, okay, what's the lesson in that failure? That something I didn't do. It's because what I didn't ask is, why am I doing this? I'm doing it for my kids. I'm doing it to build memories with my kids. If I were to get on that deal, if I won that deal, I would have lost 4 years with my kids, because that's the amount of work it I've needed, right? I would have traveled every single day. I would have basically moved to a different state to make sure that the deal works out, because once an investor invests in my deal, I'm not going to take that lightly. I have kids. That's not investor's problem. They gave me the money. I have to make sure the money returns the value, right? For the right reasons. So we wanted to make sure that we're able to do that. And when we start thinking about these questions, my thing was the freedom of my time so that I can build memories with my girls. And that has become the ultimate goal now, to make sure if I look at anything, is it going to make me spend less time with my daughters with no positive upside in the near term? Right? For example, marketing or content writing, that takes time. But I know I can do it when they're sleeping. I can do it when they're in school. I can move things around to make all these fit in, and they won't even know that I'm doing that, right? So okay, that's for me is freedom. Now that doesn't mean it's ultimate freedom. For ultimate freedom of somebody would mean that they don't work at all. I don't want that kind of freedom because I'll feel useless. I want to be a productive member of the society and making sure I'm creating an impact and making a difference in people's life. So for that, I have to make sure that I'm contributing. And my way of contribution is right now through my podcast, right now through my content, through a social media post. Literally, whatever I've learned, I'm just capturing it digitally. Again, going back to your first question, for my girls. So it's a very selfish motive that I have, and I have no shame in accepting it. But I'm doing it in a way that I can help other people along the way.
That's amazing. So, Saket, when you get asked, and I'm sure you get this question a lot, and I know you don't like it. Where should I invest? I really like what you said, in another one of your podcasts about you shouldn't be asking me, or you where to invest, but you should be asking who do I need to become, in order to make those kind of investments. So tell us about the importance of, doing that kind of soul searching and having that self-awareness and just, I think it also comes back to education, right? Rather than where do I need to invest, who do I need to become? What are those first steps to becoming, capable for, making, a certain type of investment?
Yeah. So I think part of that, again, going back to, let's talk about monetary investment really quick, because I think that's where the question is stemming from. When you're looking at monetary investment, the question that where should I invest is coming because you have no thesis of your own. Zero. And I'm saying whoever asked that question. You have no opinion. And if you have an opinion, you can't defend that opinion. Like if you were to ask me, why is Airbnb a good investment? I can tell you a 10-page thesis today. I don't have it. But I can very easily produce a 10-page thesis saying why Airbnb is a good investment. Now I could be wrong. We're not worried about that. What we're worried about is, have you done enough analysis yourself to feel confident that you have looked at everything? You may miss out on a few things. That's okay. Einstein failed 1,999 times to make the light bulb on the 1,000 time, right? So not everything is going to work. And I'm not to say that any investment you're going to make is work. So I think it's going to be more important of who you become is very important, because if you don't become a person who's curious about doing their own analysis and doing their own due diligence, you're basically trying to find somebody who's a scapegoat for your failure. I told you shouldn't invest in Airbnb because it failed. I knew it was Saket's fault. He told me I shouldn't have listened to him. All of these statements are blames, right? But if it works out, you're going to say that, oh, I always knew Saket just happened to be the facilitator. I always knew Airbnb will rock, right? So you should look back at who you are. When you reflect on yourself, this question is a very important question. You should ask yourself as in, how do you treat your own failures and how do you treat your own successes? And I invite everyone, even you, Sebastian, I do that all the time, as in, am I the one who is trying to put a blame? My first reaction, it's instinctive reaction, that what's the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, I shouldn't have listened to Sebastian. Not about, oh, you know what? I missed that piece of data. I need to pay more attention to it. Let me ask Sebastian a different question next time. Right? Because maybe, and I don't know what they asked you, but maybe we asked Sebastian a wrong question that didn't survive. He gave me the information that I was looking for, but it's much bigger than what I just asked. Right. So that's one. The second thing is more upon is you have to, investing is a team sport, right? If you want to do everything yourself, you're going to come a point where you're not going to be able to scale it. So you're going to find another job. which is you're going to be working 9 to 5 in your day job or your day business, and then another 9 to 5 at your investment career. And that's not scalable, right? If you're talking about speed, if you're talking about scale, if you're talking about freedom, you want to have that freedom as a goal that you measure everything against, including your time and how you spend it, where you spend it, who you spend it with. So things really, that's why it's important of, instead of saying what you should invest in, that's not a wrong question in general. You should always ask that question, but ask that question internally first and be on the lookout for that answer. Instead of asking what's the best investment to invest in, ask the question, how do you make an investment decision?
No, that's
Now
awesome.
you're going to grow something. Now you're going to grow, right? Now you're going to say that, oh, Sebastian is taking these 4 criterias and Saket's taking this 5. I like that to add on to the 4 are common. The 5th one is actually very powerful. So I'm going to make a slight modifications in my investments. And soon enough, you ask 10, 20, 30, 40 people, you'll develop your own investment criteria. But you approach it differently. You're not at the mercy of Sebastian to tell you what should be Saket's investment strategy. You're saying, Sebastian, what is your investment strategy? Why don't you tell me that?
Yeah.
And let me build my own. Right? And if I need more help, I'll come to you.
That makes sense. And in terms of getting started, you talked about, how you were somewhat of a passive investor at first, but you were the most passive, the most active passive investor. Yeah, exactly. The most active passive investor. And then you decided to, become active and syndicate and
Correct.
whatnot. Would you give that as an advice to someone that's starting? I mean, because for you to be a passive investor, you have to have a lot of funds. Otherwise,
not really. So a lot depends, right? It's a very relative term what a lot is. So let's just break it down to numbers. It could be a lot to some. It could not be a lot to some, right?
Right.
I don't want to pass that judgment
most of the times,
anyone.
syndicators are raising money from accredited investors, right? So at least you have to have.
Always.
Not always.
So there are some opportunities that are open to non-accredited investors, like our fund for the Airbnb fund that we have. We were accepting $25,000 from non-accredited investors up until May, and then since May we have changed that, right? So it all depends. So you could start. So
you
with
still think that's a good approach? Start passive, be the most active passive guy, learn.
If you don't have the time and the skills today, the best way is to learn from somebody who has it. Right? Now, most of the syndicators are choosing to be active because they enjoy doing it. Right? They don't hate it. They enjoy it. I love running these funds that I have because that keeps me on. I love that. So I'm okay. It's not a work to me. To your point, it's not a work to me anymore. It's really I get up in the morning and I look forward to having podcasts. Today we're sitting at 3 o'clock, almost 4 o'clock Eastern. I've recorded 7 episodes since morning. Now one could say that's a lot, or I could say that I had the most productive day, and in a way that it was a lot of fun. Right? It was not bad. It was a lot of fun. But talking to people like you, right? Why wouldn't it be fun? So I think it's more about that piece, is that when you become active investor, there's a lot at stake. But when you're becoming passive, now that doesn't mean invest in the first deal that comes across your desk. You have to make sure that you have run your own due diligence on them. You know who they are. You have a relationship with them. You're not just blindly putting your trust on anybody. So that's important. And you have to make sure that you pay attention to that. But once you've made that decision, the biggest decision a passive investor has to make is who to give money and how much to give. That's it. After that, you're off the hook most of the time, right? Now, if you're crazy like me, you're going to attend every single call. You're going to go on the site tour. But that's me. Not everyone has to do that, right? But as a passive investor, that's your job. And that's the expectation from you. After that, you sit and quiet, you sit and relax. And if your investment was yielding you the right results, you're going to collect checks.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like that approach. I attended the multifamily conference in Toronto not too long ago, and there was Grant Cardone was in there, and there was a few other real estate people. But they were talking about the difference between, because of course a lot of these people that were on stage, they had funds, so they were trying to
Correct.
of course promote their funds for passive investors, but some others wanted to teach the model of syndication, and it was interesting because they were saying how you should if you want to 10x your money, which is the whole Grant Cardone thing that he says 10x, you should become a syndicator. If you want safety and a good return, go passive. But with the approach that you're sharing, it is maybe being passive is a step, towards becoming a syndicator as a learning tool. So I think that's brilliant.
What happens, Sebastian, is when you take on somebody's capital, if you are the syndicator with heart and mind, it's a huge responsibility. Losing your money is one thing. Losing somebody else's money who put their trust in you, I know I won't be able to sleep if it were happened to me. So I may still lose the money, but I'm not losing the money because I didn't put my 100%. Right? The market didn't work out. The interest rate changed. A lot of these stories you're starting to hear from a lot of people now. At least that's a story that you can tell somebody, and you can make sure that they understand that, look, you've tried everything, right? You just wake up and said, hey, Saket, give me $100,000. Trust me, it's going to work. I may trust you, but do you trust yourself at that point? Because you have done no homework. You just have a blind faith in your abilities. And what if it doesn't work out? Are you going to be able to forgive yourself? I think that's really the question you have to ask when you become active. But as a passive, you're just risking your money.
So Saket, tell us a little bit more about your upcoming conference and about the pillars that you were describing at the beginning of spirituality. I think it was one of them, health. Well, you tell us about them.
Yeah, definitely. So the way I live my life, I wanted to figure out if there's a way. Again, everything I do is for my girls. Like, what can I do differently beyond the podcast? Because we've figured out the podcast right now. It's working out well. So what more can we do? We're like, you know what? Instead of giving people 40 episodes over 5 months, what if we give them access to 40 plus speakers in 4 days? Again, it started as a curiosity question. What if, and what benefit would it do? And that's really what we've done. We're like, you know what? There's only one way to find out. Let's test it out. And I'm a fast iterator. I don't believe in thinking about it for several years. Well, you know what? The thought has come. Let's go test it out. We'll know within a few months if it's going to work out or not. And I have no reason to believe it won't, because the speaker lineup is amazing right now. The way we've structured the conference is, the question we were trying to answer is, what do people need to feel wealthy? The question that we asked was, for the initial question we asked is, what is wealth? We need to define what wealth is. And then the way we define wealth is, the way I define wealth is 5 key dimensions in your life. You have to have the right mindset. You have to have the right health. Whatever that means to you, whatever the health means. If being 200 pounds overweight means health to you, that's great. Right? We're not telling what it means. We're telling the importance of doing that. And any dimension we touch, the lens that we're trying to use is it supporting you in your goals, or is it inhibiting in your goals, right? If losing
for
50
each one
pounds
of these areas, right?
For each one of these areas. If losing
so there's
50
mindset,
pounds, mindset, health, your relationships, your money, and your impact, your contribution. So essentially, we're trying to see that, can we create 5-dimensional human beings? Right? Are superhumans. That's really our goal, right? Can we? That's an experiment. That's a curiosity question. Going back to curiosity doesn't kill the cat. Curiosity actually makes you more powerful, right? So we want to make sure we have that. So that's how we've structured our 4 days. Day one is all about redefining wealth for people. What does it really mean to be wealthy? What does wealth mean? Second part of the day, first day is all about mindset. Like how do you shift your mind in a way that's working in your favor, your mindset and your mind. Day two is all about your health and your relationship, and relationship with not intimate relationships. We're talking about relationship with yourself, relationship with your higher power, with your kids, with your parents, with your spouse, with your coworkers, any relationship.
You even talk about relationship with money.
Relationship with money.
I heard you talk about that.
Any relationship. No, and that's a podcast episode in itself. It's probably the culprit for a lot of people being afraid of money. We can talk about that at some other episode. And then day three is all about money itself. But we're not talking about how to make money. We're talking about what money is, because it's important to know what real money is, at least in the US and the Western countries. It's all debt. It's actually fake money. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about asset protection and stuff. And last concept on day three is all about impact, contribution. Because the first 3 days, first 2.5 days has predominantly been inward driven, selfish. What can I do for myself? Last topic really is of day three is more about what can I do for others? What can I do with the freedom, with the money, with the options that I've created myself? And then day four, what we initially had only day three, we added day four really to help people make money, right? Day four is the outlier right now, but it's a very important outlier because we need to make sure, as the questions you were asking about passive investing and building thesis, I'm realizing that, yes, while I can say people should build their own thesis, they don't know how to, right? So we're bringing a panel of experts there with us to say that, hey, you know what? If it's a multifamily, here's how I would evaluate it. If it was a mobile home park, this is how I would do it. If it's an Airbnb, this is how I do it. If it's a venture capital, this is how I do it. So at the end of the day four, you would have a lot of different ways of how people are looking at their investments. The question I asked you is, what's a good investment for you, Sebastian? Most of those people on that day four are going to tell you what their investment criteria is without you asking them. So we're bringing the water to the camel. Right at that point, that's the only thing we can do. Instead of asking the camel to go to the water, I'm like, you know what? We'll bring these people to you, listen to them, build your own thesis, and go make shit ton of money. So you can take care of everything else around you, your mind, your body, your health, your relationships, your impact, because not that it's needed in that way, but most people have built that sequential logic where if I don't have the money, I can't do anything. But if you have everything else, you can make a lot of money, which is an interesting mind shift. But let's meet. Tony Robbins says, sometimes to get people what they want, you need to give people what they need. Right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this conference. That let's give them all the information that they need, that they think they don't have. And once they have it, they can't say they don't have it anymore. Then they have to figure out how to make that information work for them.
Execution.
The summit is called, the conference is called, it's execution, right? The conference is called Migrate to Wealth Summit. You can find the information at migrate2wealthsummit.com. Sebastian, I don't know if you've shown
you have the dates.
Stuff. You can include that information there. You have the dates, October 24th to 27th.
Amazing. So yeah, for anyone out there that is into investing and just wants to take their life as a whole to the next level, I would totally encourage you to sign up. I definitely will sign up myself as well. Yeah. And I see that the time is over, Saket. I think this was very, very interesting. It went by super fast. It flew away. I think it was a very, very interesting conversation. Really, really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully there's going to be another episode where we're going to, be able to cover even more topics here.
Of course, but we'd love to.
But yeah, Saket, where can people connect with you, other than with Migrate to Wealth?
You can definitely, I would definitely recommend people joining the summit. It's free. There's no charge to attend. Migrate2wealthsummit.com. The wait list is open. We're waiting for a few final details. So if you have but don't know when you're going to listen to this episode, but if I would recommend going to migrate2wealthsummit.com/waitlist. That's there. But you can also find me on pretty much all social media handles. And I was fortunate enough to make sure I get the Saket Jain. I hate it, but that's the one I could get. I couldn't get Saket Jain. It's the Saket Jain on most of the social media platforms. So jump on one, ping me, DM me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. Also, my cell phone number, I always give it away. It's 703-380-2020. And I check all my messages. I answer all my phone calls myself. I don't have a VA
That's
doing
true,
that
though.
for me. So just text me, just ping me. A mechanism for reaching me shouldn't be a reason why you're not able to reach me. So now you know
That's
all the
awesome.
different ways to get hold of me. So let's
That's
make use of
awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Saket, and hopefully there's going to be another time.
it. Thank you, Sebastian.